Good morning, my outstanding friends. You are in for a treat, as I am. I have invited Charles Darwin to debate with me about the origin of life. He has declined. I got no response from him whatsoever. But I do know what he said, and now I am going to respond to his claims. Nobody even hears his name anymore. Darwin used to be, Darwin theory, evolution, slime turned into everything. Well, let's talk about that. Let's try to understand the feasibility of what he said versus the feasibility of what I will present. There is no question evolution is absolutely for certain. But evolution doesn't mean that some molecules turned into life all by itself by bumping into each other. There was more of a creative spirit put into that union than just bumping molecules back and forth. And that's exactly what he claims. I'm going to tell you what he claimed, and I'll show you what I claim, and you make your own decision. How about that? Okay, let's just jump right into it. This is Charles Darwin, who is primarily known as the architect of the theory of the evolution by natural selection. Evolution means just that things get better, or actually they can get worse and worse. They can evolve up or down, so the evolution or devolution. But those things do happen, no question whatsoever. However, where did that life spark from? Where'd that come from? But he had this idea that it came from basically a dish of soup, which would be a tiny little lake, and it festered and all. You ever see these ponds, these little scum ponds? That's what he's talking about. A bunch of scum got together, but why would the scum get there? How did the scum turn itself into scum? And why would it turn itself into an animal? And why would it turn itself into a bird? Why would those things happen? I say, let's point to a creator that created those things. And what was that? Why would I even think about that? Well, every single culture on the face of this planet, 100%, has stories of gods that created all kinds of monsters and giants and dragons and 100% talks about gods, giants, dragons, a great flood, monsters, every single one, 100%. Why? Why? All right, Darwin says, well, we just all evolved from scum and it just all happened. So now I have the evidence that all those things did exist. My giants are DNA tested and CAT scanned, and I have them right here. I'm going to show them to you in a minute. And very, very big giants. So this is not a joke. I have to make it understood. He didn't know any of this stuff. He didn't have any of the evidence I have now. But I have the mud fossils, and that was a discovery I made of mud fossils that were creatures that turned from bodies of flesh and bones and feathers, in this case, hair follicles that were from giants a mile tall, different kind of feet from creatures that don't exist anymore, apparently. I don't see too many feet like that. And that is a foot, that's not a shoe. And we have other ones with springs in them. Instead of bones, that's the heel, and that's the strap that runs up to the leg bone. And these are springs. Those aren't some little sea creatures. And I can show this in detail, and I have many, many times. So we are living in a world of fabrication. These things have been fabricated to become accepted. And, he was probably some head of some department, and he just came up with that theory, and then everybody that wanted to keep employed had to sort of listen to him and talk about it and say, ooh, this makes sense. Plus, we can deny God. And a lot of this is strictly for denial of God and Jesus Christ. And if you talk about them in the academic realm today, you will be dismissed. All right, so that I'm coming from that perspective. I am taking gods, creators. I can't explain all of the details, but I do have a lot of the details now that back up and support the ancient texts of the Enoch, the Colburn Bible, and a whole bunch of different other texts. Apollodorus, Ovid, Hesiod, all removed. Enoch, I think I may have mentioned him. He had a whole bunch of different information about how big these creatures were. Miles tall. And there's, oh, come on, Roger, that's insane. Well, let me show you something. That's a hair follicle right there. That's a hair follicle. It's 2 inches wide. Ours is about 2/1000ths of an inch. So that means this is 1,000 times bigger than the ones we have in us. Now, I can't prove right now that that's human, but I tell you what, if you drill it in deep enough in here where the artery and the vein is, you probably could get some residual little bits of DNA, because this looks very transitioned. The ones that I submitted were literally blood. They were just literally red blood. It was dried, but clay is almost like blood, Clay is dissolved flesh, basically. This is what nobody understood this. Nobody understood it until mud fossils. And they still don't understand it because they won't look. So this is me against Darwin, against really academia, because academia is 100% in support of this. I'm reading articles now about the most recent, everything supports Darwin. Oh, Darwin, yes, 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 yes. No, 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 no. See, I had an extra no. All right, this is the hair follicle I just showed you. That is a muscle that comes down. It's called the pili erector muscle, and that lets your hair stand up on end. That's where it attached right there. All right, so that is that attachment. The muscle embeds itself in there, and it pulls up like this and makes it go back and forth. Now, that, of course, is the shaft right here at the top. And if you look at it in a microscope, you can see all the little skin wrinkles around it, and that's what happens at the top. Now, this is the sebaceous gland. All right, you see that? That little globby looking thing? That's the sebaceous gland right there. This spot right there and right there are the hair papilia, they call it, which is basically the vein and the artery right at the bottom. Now, because it's the vein and the artery, right, if you got in there probably 1/4 of an inch or maybe a little more, you should be able to get some pretty good DNA, because that's where blood fed this thing. So there should be some still in there, but I can't guarantee that. However, I can guarantee you this is a hair follicle. And that's where the root ball comes straight up through. And you can see, right up through the top. This is 1,000 times bigger than ours. So if this was from a human, I can't guarantee what it's from. But I don't see anything that's big enough now to have a hair follicle that big. So if it was a human, it'd be about a mile tall, approximately a mile tall. Now, I also have all the no-toes, and we have a ton of different styles of no-toes. I mean, I got big ones, I got little ones, I got big oompa loompa, I call them, and there's all kinds of creatures that were here prior to the flood. So they were pre-flood creatures, and they got wiped out in the Great Flood, which now is that's understood. It's called the Great Dying, and it's from the Triassic layer, which I have here. I have Triassic, and I have a Triassic layer with a human footprint embedded in it. So they were here when the Triassic layer was laid down, because it's right in the middle. There's a red bed, which is the flesh from boiled creatures from the impact of Venus into our atmosphere. It boiled all the creatures, and the flesh turned into what they call a red bed. Then all the rest of the bits and pieces of the body came on top of that called the gray clay. And then all the fallout from the volcanoes and burning and fire and destruction and all kinds of stuff settled down, and that made a black cap. And I have a human footprint right in the middle of all of those. That event happened just like that, and it happened worldwide. And they agree with this. And I'll show you the article in a minute, just so that we can get past this. The Great Flood did occur. They call it the Triassic Great Dying, Great Extinction. Triassic, supposed to be 400 million years ago, somewhere around there, hundreds of millions of years ago. And worldwide, it created these 3 layers. And I've been reporting on this for the last couple of videos, so you should go back and look. My last couple of videos show the Triassic footprint stuck right into the red bed, pushed the gray clay down through the red bed. They were all wet at the same time. So this Triassic event was the Great Global Flood. And that's all. Well, let me show you the article, then you'll understand. Okay, my friends, this is from a Libra Text Biology. Normally they're pretty good. Let's see what they have to say about the evolution of life. Now, it says, are dinosaurs evidence of past life forms? Because they're not around anymore, they say. Evolution can be described as a change in species over time. Dinosaur fossils are significant evidence of evolution and of past life on Earth. And so are mud fossils, which I have presented and will again in copious quantities. Now, they're talking about the evolution of life. How do they account for the start and so forth? Let's see what they have to say. It says the diversity of life on Earth today is the result of evolution. Tons of life, and it's just because of evolution. Now, life began on Earth at least 3.5 to 4 billion years ago. At least. That's just a statement and a claim they're making. And it has been evolving ever since. Well, that's an extreme hypothetical. There's no way for them to know that. No possible way. At first, all living things on Earth were simple, single-celled organisms. Another complete fabrication of just saying this is a fact, having no supporting evidence whatsoever. It says much later, the first multicellular organisms evolved. So they started to turn into creatures. For some reason, at first, all living things on Earth were simple, single-celled organisms. Do you know what a single-celled organism is? You think it's simple? It's one of the most unbelievably complex things you can imagine. Just a single cell. Now, it says much later, the first multicellular organisms evolved. So a bunch of them ganged up together and said, let's start making things. And after that, Earth's biodiversity greatly increased. What they call it, some kind of explosion. Figure below shows a timeline of the history of life on Earth. You can also find an interactive timeline of the history of life at the link below. Right there. Now, what are they saying? Billions of years ago, the sun ignites. Oh, how did they come up with that? And then the Earth shows up. Well, I can't disagree with those things because I don't know, but they're showing the sun, the Earth, and then the moon show up. Hold on one second. All right, I'm not going to go through the whole thing because it's just complete nonsense. All of these things they're saying, well, this happened at so many billions of years ago, and then we had some oxygen, and then we had some bacteria and mushrooms and fungus and fish, and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden we had people. All starting from the sun igniting, the Earth and the moon. That part I can accept. From there over to about here is just nonsense. All of these creatures basically came about very, very quickly, and they call it the, I think it's called a Permian explosion. Hold on a second. Whoops, my mistake. It was called the Cambrian explosion. And the other one, the Permian, is the Triassic Permian extinction. This is when life popped into existence. It just bang like that. It's called the biological Big Bang. 538 million years ago. They say all of a sudden, all kinds of complex life occurred on Earth. Well, then what happened? Well, then you had the Permian-Triassic extinction, and that was approximately 251.9 million years ago on Thursday afternoon. The Permian-Triassic extinction event on Pacific time, that was. Also known as the late Permian extinction event. The latest Permian extinction event was the Great Dying. So we had the Great Proliferation, the Big Bang explosion of life, and then 300 million years later or something, they all died off. Well, what happened after that? All life died off? Well, just about. Let me show you what they have to say about it at Yale. This is about the creatures that were here. Many of them were outright bizarre in appearance and do not resemble any organism alive today. This is Lydia Tarhan, postdoctoral fellow at Yale, first author of the study. We would like to understand their relationship, these oddball creatures, to the complex animals that evolved shortly thereafter, which is what we have now. It says, are these organisms, they call it Edicara, that's this Triassic organism, some sort of failed evolutionary experiment, because they were wiped out? Or do they include the ancestors of animals that subsequently colonized the oceans? Now, why are they talking about colonize the oceans? The reason is because this event that killed everything on Earth was a worldwide event. Every single place on Earth has the same 3 layers, which is a red bed, gray clay, and a black cap. And that was because of boiling the oceans and boiling the creatures, and the red fleshy parts of the creatures settled to the bottom, and that caused the red bed, and then the other body parts and so forth, and trees and all that kind of stuff settled on top of that. It's called a gray clay. And then the black cap was the fallout from all of the volcanoes and combustion and burning and everything, because we were almost hit by Venus. Now, so they admit this was worldwide. First of all, they say, yes, it was a worldwide event, and it wiped out virtually everything. Was it a failed evolutionary experiment? Yes, it was. It says a big part of the answer involves figuring out how the fossils were able to form. I have fully figured it out, and there's no problem. It's nucleophilic invasion in a hot soup with a lot of silicates. The animals themselves were entirely soft-bodied, not true whatsoever. They were just normal creatures, gigantic bones, flesh, blood, teeth, everything. They lived before the evolution of shells, teeth, or bones. No, they didn't. They had all of those things, and feathers, and toenails, fingers, toes. So they say only the bones and teeth and shells are typically the only parts of an organism to become fossilized. That's because they did not pay attention to what I presented to them, which was that you can get perfect preservation of the entire creature. And I showed it many times. Like my friend here, Caesar Augustus, there's his feathers. All right, and they all died in the flood. And that's why they have one side that's very flat and one side that's really in good shape. There's this little nose hole thing. There's his beak, his eye, and all his feathers. And if you look at it correctly, you know what to look at. That's his throat. And that's right down the center of his throat. And around there, I suppose, are bones or whatever. But that's where the artery is. And I've checked that for catalase reaction, and it gives me a very strong catalase reaction. That's where the artery ran down. So these things were, and I have a DNA tests and CAT scans, new species like this here. no toes. I've probably shown you all this stuff a couple times in the same video. I don't know. I got confused. Happens a lot. But this is just not correct. And this is Yale University. Now, they say the researchers realized the oceans during that time were much richer in dissolved silica than they are today. Correct. Because there's a siliceous ooze, which is silicates, all over the bottom of the ocean. And they sink to the bottom because of specific gravity. They're just heavy enough to sink. And it's a ooze. And when the Earth got hit, it overwhelmed, and all that stuff rose to the surface, and the waters became supersaturated with silicates. And the silicates infused into all of the empty body parts, basically. And silica fuses with a lot of things. So you get the quartz veins, which are literally veins and arteries that filled up with silicates. It enabled the transformation of these sand around the animals to turn into rock over a matter of hours or years rather than the usual time frame. Yes, it happened pretty quick. But it all happened because of rapidly buried by sand during underwater storm events. Well, the whole world was underwater, that's why. It was worldwide. Nobody's denying that. They say it was a worldwide event. And everything I've just shown you points to the fact it was a worldwide 3-layer event, the Triassic layer. Red bed, gray clay, black cap. And that's because Venus almost hit Earth. All right, here's right here. This is a paper from Yale. Exceptional preservation of soft-bodied creatures in silica-rich oceans. The Edinburgh biota, they just slapped a name on it. Edinburgh just refers to where they found these fossils they're using. Biota just means creatures. So these creatures were the earliest fossilized ecosystem of complex creatures, basically. It occurs in a terminal Edinburgh strata worldwide. Another thing, they just threw a name on there. This is the Triassic layer. In this strata worldwide, yet how the fossils were preserved remains controversial. Exceptional preservation of soft-bodied creatures. And that's from Yale, and I presented my paperwork to them a year before they made this announcement to the world that all of this stuff was, and then they actually took credit for it. I think they should at least included my name. Not to mention, you would never hear a word about this if it wasn't for me continuously poking the bear here, because they should have done something with this and say, wait, we made a mistake about this preservation. We didn't. Let's look into it deeper. Instead, I have been shunned and pushed away. I really can't hold anything against Darwin because he just didn't know. He was trying to come up with a logical explanation for where did life come from, and the only explanation there is that works is there is a supreme God, and then there's a bunch of other gods that run regions in the universe. I don't think we can be the only one. That's what makes sense to me. But let's get back to the physical evidence, and the physical evidence is I have a foot right here. I call them no toes. All right, the toes are built in, but other than that, it's just about like a shoe. And I believe this footprint here, this is the foot right here, could something like this, or this foot even possibly, could have created this footprint, step down through, this is gray clay, step down through the red bed, and that was the black cap that comes up on top. I have 2 videos I just did on this, about the Triassic footprint. How do they explain this? They cannot. This was a worldwide event, as I explained. They agree with that. They agree with exceptional preservation, and all of my stuff was found right in this area. But they say it was all soft tissues, and they think that because this looks like a piece of mud. It looks like a piece of rock mud. That was a bone. And I can tell you that, no question whatsoever. And not only that, there is still the tiniest bit of bone right there. We're going to put this in a microscope in a second, and I'll show you that is bone. The rest is the marrow and all of the inside of the bone, and then outside is the calcium part. But nucleophilic invasion and substitution means that whatever is in this soup that's just continued to the aqueous, watery solution with these transition metals, they finally found their unique partner to bond with, which made it turn into mud. But that little spot right there didn't get it. This must have been somewhere like that in the mud, because that one didn't get, or it could have been up, I don't know. But there is a piece of bone there. We're going to look at that in a microscope. This is not soft-bodied stuff. This is just like us. Only they were really crazy-looking creatures. I agree with that. And they were pre-flood, because this is what killed them all, right here. They were killed. And this was here. I think I showed you the hair follicle. I believe I did. If I didn't, I will. That's 1,000 times bigger than us. That's 5,000 feet tall a person would be. You know, even if it was a 5-footer. If it was a person. I don't know if it was or not. But there's nothing around right now that has a hair follicle anywhere near that size. All right, this is a bone. It's literally boiled out from the creature's body, and it's a bone, and then it's snapped right here. Now, this is the last bits and pieces of bone that are in there. Everything else is transitioned into what's called mud stone. Now, this is literally the membrane that surrounds, all body parts have membranes, and the bone has its own membrane, and that's a membrane, but it's snapped. Now, we're going to look at the bony part in there in a second here. Let me tweak this in a little bit. You can see that? That's the skin. Let me see if I can run my feather here up the side where you can see exactly where we are. All right, you see I'm coming right up the side. I'm right up at the top where the skin is. Now I'm going to go down the side, down the bone, way down below. I'm coming up. I'm right up there. That's the skin. All right, so that is the skin. Or, well, not skin. It's the membrane. Skin and membrane, same thing though. All right, I just put some water on there so you can see the whiteness of the bone. All right, and it appears that it was preserved. Maybe there was blood right next to it or something, because blood is an extreme preservative. And you can see this area is kind of gooey compared to the other areas. But all that stuff right there, that black gooey stuff, that's bone marrow. All right, because that's right in the inside of this bone. That actually might be some more bone here. This one's easy to see. And it looks like there was a tube here of something. I don't know what it was. Maybe a tendon or I don't know what. But let me show you what the fabric looks like on fascia. Okay, my inquisitive friends, get ready. Basalt igneous rocks. They're showing this patterning for basalt igneous rock. Well, I'm going to show you a CAT scanned, DNA certified human lung, which is now a perfectly preserved mud fossil because it was in a great flood and landed flat on its back like this and petrified in this manner through nucleophilic invasion and substitution. However, in this case, as in this case, the pleura, the coating, the fabric, stayed intact. This looks like a little bit of something, but this is the entire lung. And this was, like I say, DNA tested, CAT scanned. And here we're going to look at the fabric on this, which is identical to that. Ready? Get ready. Now I got to focus in. I got to turn the lights off. Oh, there we go. Now let's see if I can focus in here. Let me come up a little further. You see how that's the same fabric. You see this fabric right there? The lung I have here is just like it just came out of the box. I mean, you could transplant the damn thing. It's absolutely fabulously perfect. Now, you're seeing that right there, and that's what they're calling a basalt igneous rock. My stuff is certified, and it can be retested. Somebody says, "Oh no, that's not real." Well, retest it. I'm not going to do it again. I did it. I had 3 DNA tests done. Now let's look at the side. This is the side where the red flap comes wrapping around. Look at that. You want to see some blood? That's about as bloody as they get. And that's where that little flap is that attaches to the next body part. And it has a very, very dense, bloody spot there. And that's, I took blood from somewhere from around here, but I drilled inside of it. I can't remember where. It was a long time ago, close to 10 years ago. And but I got a good, very, very dense sample of red blood. And he said it was basically almost like straight blood. All right, get ready for this. I guarantee you this has never been seen before. This is the pleura on a lung, and it is deep and thick. You see how it comes way down to here? And I'm going to show you, I'm going to pan down and show you. This is the fabric. Your bag, I mean your lungs are in these rubber bags. I mean they are a fabric rubber bag. Now, I'm going to try to pan down on it. Whoops. You see, now I'm going way down. Well, I got to focus down below. I'm way up at the top right now. All right, and I'm coming down. This is all layers and layers and layers. So I'm losing focus here, and now I'm down to where these are the alveoli. You see these little holes there, these little round balls? Those are the alveoli in your lung. All right, if I put a little more water on there, you can see them better. But this is the separation layer between the membrane, which is the pleura, and the actual red blood cell, alveoli. All right, get ready. We're going to put some hydrogen peroxide on here. Now we're way up off of this lung, so we may not see anything from this distance, but we might see something. Yeah, look at the bubbling. You see it? Look at them bubble. This is just nothing but almost solid blood. I'm going to get right down in there, and you'll see it really, really kicking. You see it bubbling? See that? That's autocatalysis reaction. All right, catalase is an enzyme. Your body creates it to counteract additional oxygen molecules. So anytime you see the bubble, and that's a reaction to the excess oxygens. All right, so it's a lung, and let me show you how close up. Hold on. Here it is right here, but I got to turn the lights on. This one, I don't know if I showed you this one yet. The other one was flawlessly perfect, completely encased, and this one here, this part broke away. You see the seam broke? We were looking right in here. That's the thickness of the pleura. It's thick. And that's so you can go like this. And it's the same thing, flat as a pancake, because it was in a flood. And when they get soaked, and when they dried out, it depends on which ones dried out quicker. If they dried out pretty quick, the seams broke open. If they didn't dry out quick, it seems like they were in pretty good, kept intact very, very well. There's different conditions, and there was different chemistry. If they were close to a heart or a lung or a liver, they would have a lot of blood, a lot of iron. If they were close to something that had caustic stuff and acids, the stomach or whatever, they would be interacted with that particular chemistry. It's very, very selective. about how things fossilize. They call that basalt. They call everything basalt. They would call this basalt. And my buddy here, Caesar, they would call that basalt. That's his neck. He was a goose. And almost all regular stones that are brown looking like that have this called aluminum silicates. It's called feldspar. And feldspar is from collagens, which are a breakdown from biphospholipid, phosphorus. All right, you got to understand a little chemistry too here. Phosphorus in a heating, boiling water is broke down into aluminum silicates. Aluminum silicates. Aluminum silicates are what every feldspar is made out of. Aluminum silicates. Every feldspar. That's feldspar, 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 feldspar. You can't hardly find a rock that isn't feldspar. But then when you get inside, it's not feldspar. You see this? This is feldspar on the outside. But you get inside, you got veins and arteries, and you got meat. It petrified. And again, flat on the bottom. I don't know what this was. Some kind of an organ, I think, probably a liver. But I can't tell for sure. But everything was, all these rocks, even like this one here. Here's another lung. I showed you the lungs. It was absolutely flawless. I showed you this one here. It was 50-50, torn up. And this one here is completely gone of everything other than its structural integrity is still here, but that's it. That would have been a lung like this. So, I have plenty of evidence to support my statements. And as far as Darwin goes, well, like I say, I can't hold him accountable for not understanding what he had to deal with. He had what he was trying to make sense of something. I have no problem with that. But if I could present my stuff against what he was thinking, then I really have no problem, because then we could have an interaction and discussion. But I have been kept away from this because of the evidence that I have. There's some more feldspar. That's a rind. You can actually see all the different fabric in this too. I don't know what this was either. But that rind is that membrane basically, and it's feldspar. And that's because it was invaded by aluminum silicates. And the aluminum silicates, the silicates specifically, came up off of the ocean floor. And probably the aluminum too, I don't know. I'm not sure. Okay, this is on the bottom of the grip skin. And this is like glue. Basically, it's just like a gluey pad that glued it to the main part of the fingertip. This is a sweat pore coming down into the flesh. That circle. Now take your time and look at it carefully. All right. Now, I don't know whether it just works with this one spot or not, but I believe the sweat pore comes down through here and spins down. I can show you the anatomical. But on top of this was the actual sweat pore in the fingertip. And if I haven't shown you, well, let me show you now just so we don't miss it. All right, this is the top of the fingerprint, and that is the top of the sweat pore. That's where the sweat pore is. You see these little holes? I think those must have been a sweat come out of there or something. But this is the structure on the top, and I think I showed you before the lower part, which was where the hair follicle, where the sweat gland goes down into the skin. Now, let me show you the anatomical, but first of all, what we were looking at right there is this, which has a fingerprint in it. And what we were looking at before is this side, which has the sweat gland coming through, but all you do is see the little poke through there. You don't see the whole sweat gland. But you see how, hold on. You see how that just came off like a scab. When I whacked it, it was on the hand, and this is right where the fingernail was. Coming way up here, this is 3 feet long. And these are the print ridges here, and that's the sweat pore, that's the sweat pore, and we looked at it from both sides. And again, this was when I went down inside. Here you can't get anything. It's just a big slab of dense, thick skin. But once you get down inside our fingertips, they're just saturated with blood. I mean, they're literally saturated. So I took, very, very good fresh blood. So these are the fingerprints, and I just showed you the sweat pores. And this is the DNA reports that are all three of the things I had tested came back positive, and two of them were dense, excellent quality, which was one of them was this big, huge fingertip, and the other one was the lung. Those two were perfect. The other one was very good too, but it wasn't like raw blood. And here's how it comes down. This is very well done. All kinds of extraction, this and that. It took like 3 months, PCR testing. This was the first time it was done in the entire world that I know of. So certainly for ancient humans, and no question whatsoever for giants. And they did all these extractions and all kinds of stuff I don't know anything about. However, I do know that they did negative controls on all of them, and they showed no negative issues, so that it was just one solid set of DNA. And these two were very dense, and this one wasn't as dense, but it did show up. And because that was the mud tip, that one was really heavily invaded with mud. But the other two were like raw blood. And they submitted these to Eaton Biosciences in New Jersey for sequencing. And they used all kinds of different this and that. Excellent quality DNA sequence was obtained for the 36-inch tip and the lung. Those two were the best. And here's what they came back. Homo sapien mitochondrial B and D loop regions. Both of them. And this was for the results of the blast. And what is a blast? Well, it says following the processing and formatting of the DNA sequence data. That's all the program codes in the DNA. And they used 80 to 100 base pairs of DNA, which is the standard sequence generated for the 36-inch tip sample using these certain primers, and for the lung sample using these other primers, submitted individually into a nucleotide blast, which is a search, a nucleotide blast search, using the National Center for Biotechnology Information database, whereby each DNA sequence was matched to all DNA sequences contained in this NCBI DNA sequence database. And the results of the blast were this. And this is modern human. This is not, but it's only the mother side, mitochondrial DNA. And they only look for certain groups, the certain gene regions. And when they found those, that is 100% match for modern human mitochondrial DNA. And that's what they found. And this goes back almost 10 years ago. So now I really need to have somebody finally look at this objectively. And these guys did an absolutely fabulous job. And I know that they didn't get any applause for it, let me put it that way. It's very rare that people will want anybody to do anything that changes what will affect them. I understand that. I do understand. I really do. Because this is a significant change. Because I'm talking about this here. This was the fingernail. The fingerprints that were on this. I smacked that off. It just popped right off like a scab. And it's 36 inches long, 3 feet, front to back. There's the fingernail. Perfect. Very nice. Well cared for, it looks like to me. There's that little bumper that goes between bones. That's a nail, an artery and a vein, and that's fingerprints. And I think I showed you, well, I just showed you the fingerprints here. Here they are right there. This is the thickness of that, this here. All right, and it's just like tough. That's why they show it with no nothing to it. It's just keratinized cells, very heavy duty. And it just popped off just like I showed you. And underneath it was just saturated with blood. Now, this is where you get that. I showed one of the little sweat gland spots which come up through. Wherever this, but the sweat glands are down below, so we can't see those. All I could show you was that little bump on the bottom side, and I showed you the sweat pore from the top, which was this one here, one of these two. And I showed you the other side, which was where it goes through, because every sweat pore penetrates. I know I showed you this, but that was the lung that I had DNA tested and CAT scan. You can't see much in the CAT scan, it's pretty dense. This one here is another lung that eroded in a whole different manner and filled up with silicates, except some blood was still left in it. And this is the blood that came out of it. I got a lot of stuff. I mean, a lot of stuff. And this was the other one. This hand had a fingertip and some knuckles and all kinds of stuff from this. And I sent a sample from this in to be tested as well. And it was also human DNA. And it's between 3 and 4 feet wide, this thing. And if you matched up your own hand to this, there's the little cleave in between. And that's the tendon, it's the left hand. This is the grip skin. And I have fingers and knuckles and all kinds of things from this. So and it is DNA tested, and parts of it are CAT scan. Here's some fingertips, hold on. Where is it? All right, this is the fingertip. And this is where the fingernail bed was, you see it? This 2D CAT scans, amazing. Jesse Garant and Associates did these absolutely fabulous, 7 CAT scans, and they were absolutely incredible, 2D and 3D. The 2D is the best, because then you can see the features on the outside. All right, I still have this fingertip here. It's about 7, 8 inches long, something like that. Now, and this was another CAT scan. Hold on. All right, this is from the back looking at it. And this is the thumb. And you know it's a thumb because one side has got dents and the other side is flat. So the bone is down this side. It's a right-hand thumb. That's where the vein is, and that's where the tendon runs up this side. That's where the artery is, and that's where the tendon runs up this side. This is the bone, and that's that excess chunk. If you put your hand like that, you got one of those too, see? Your bone runs up this side, and that lump hangs over the edge, just exactly like this. So that's a right-hand thumb. Okay, my fabulous friends, I started this out by saying I was going to be debating Darwin. Well, I'm debating his legacy. And his legacy exists behind the ivy-covered walls. And those are the people that should engage with this very, very valid information. And like I say, it's been 15 years now, 10 years since I've had really undeniable evidence. But if it's not seen, it's not seen. And they can suppress this information, which is not supposedly, it's not supposed to be the academic way. Let me put it that way. If you look up what they call academic fraud, it drops right in there. So in order to maintain their grip on everything, they have to deny even what cannot be denied. This is what is very, very difficult for me to accept, because I'm a material scientist. I expect other people to be able to engage with material, factual evidence and be able to dispute it one way or the other. I've showed that I can prove, including the CAT scans, the DNA, the chemistry, the process, the history, the ancient texts, they all support every word I'm saying. And if somebody says they don't, please, somebody in academia, tell me why I am wrong here. What have I done wrong? What is my guilt? Is it because I want evidence of truth? And I want to be able to discuss the truth? Is that a problem? Is that my problem? I don't think so. but I don't know how to get over that problem. But I don't think it's my problem. I just think that until we can get an open discussion on this, it's just, I think they're just hoping it'll go away, and it's not going to go away. It just can't go away now. It's too late. Now we have evidence. Before it was just theoretical. Oh, they used to say this and they said that, and this could be and that could be, and who said this and that. Well, I say who said this and that, and then I say, well, there it is. They're giants. No question whatsoever. Dragons. No question whatsoever. They fit exactly what was written in the ancient text, up to the point of absurdness. Miles tall people. And I think Darwin had some kind of theory that they couldn't pump the blood up because of gravity or something. I don't know what it was, they come up with all kinds of crazy stuff. I've heard more stories that you can't even believe it. In the face of undeniable visual and chemical and DNA and CAT scans and everything else is still. That to me is an issue. That's a real problem, especially when they're teaching our kids, and these are the ones that are teaching our kids. That's just not right. It's just not right. I find it very difficult day after day to go down this road. And if you don't speak up, I have no voice. I've been squished. And I guess somebody's going to have to do it. I see it's getting around here and there, but now it's starting to get a little foolish. Some people are being very foolish about the way they're presenting it. And it's not in a material, factual way. And they're hoping that they'll do the same thing they did to me, make me out to be an insane person for making these claims. But at the time, I had the evidence. I wasn't making insane claims. They sounded insane, no question whatsoever. Absolutely. The first time you heard it, you go, oh, this guy's out of his mind. But if you pay any attention, and then the CAT scans, the DNA, the specimens, the chemistry, all of that proves every word I'm saying. It's time for them to engage. And then we can get to a point of understanding a true past and the circumstances that we have surrounding us. That's all I want is truth. That's all I've been trying for is truth. And these things are for you to see. And for others as a test. I suggest you give the test to others. Just say, what do you think? What do you think about this stuff, this mud fossil stuff? What do you think it could possibly be real? Look at the evidence. Do you agree or disagree? Maybe just try that and see what happens. All right? I found my way out of this thing, I think, so you're going to have to find your own way out, it looks like to me. Because I can't see this ever getting into the mainstream in my lifetime for sure. And the same thing that happened to Velikovsky happened to me. And Velikovsky, if I didn't resurrect him with my book back in 2015, nobody still would know his name. And when I did, I asked all kinds of people. I say, you ever heard of Velikovsky? No, never heard of him. Or the other one was, oh yeah, that guy was a crazy guy. He said some planet gave birth or something. Yes. And I show the evidence of these events. And that was Venus, which almost hit Earth and caused the mud fossils. All recorded in every single culture on the face of the planet, which also recorded there were giants and dragons and gods. The only one that doesn't go along with any of those are your teachers. Academia as a culture is against all of that stuff. And to me, that's against learning. At least examining it. So I'm going to leave it at that. I know I have no other way to do this other than to just keep harping on the fact that it's not being allowed. Not that there's no evidence here, it's just not allowed. All right, I love you all. Thank you. Bye.